All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be a stellar podcast today. Right before we get into it, I want to shout out Vetlife. Vetlife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces struggles when they transition from active duty back to normal civilian life, and Vetlife is there to ease that transition. If you want to reach out to Vetlife, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, let's get right into it. I'm joined by two gentlemen today. I'm joined by Christopher Klebba and his father, Chris Klebba. Appreciate you coming in. And we're going to go in a little bit about, your background story, how you've built to the man that you are today, lessons that you've learned along the way, and just some of the leadership principles that you think could steer the next generation in the right direction. So for the people that don't know you, let's just start with this. Let's take us way back. Were you born and raised here in Michigan? And, how did you get your start in the business world?
Yeah, thanks, James. Glad to be here. It's exciting to talk with you. I was born here in Michigan. Yeah, born pretty basic childhood, middle class. Actually born in the Detroit area real young, then moved to the Warren area. So grew up there, and as I said, typical childhood, high school, had two brothers, only 2 years apart, so a lot of fighting, a lot of partying. So I think I beat them both up pretty good. I was the strongest in the group. But anyway, so we grew up there and had a lot of fun, and then went in the Air Force right at 17 years of age, went in the Air Force, traveled a lot, felt the need to be a part of the military, and then basically went through that. I always had a passion for fitness, even in the days of Air Force, kind of played around with some natural bodybuilding contests and things like that, and basically got out of the Air Force and thought you were supposed to get a job, so off I went and got a job. I don't know how you want to keep going or stop there for a minute.
No, I think that's a great intro, and plus you're a veteran, and this podcast is sponsored by a veteran company, so it's great. What was your first job when you came back from the military service? Because a lot of the times during that transition period is where people get lost. So you said you were a fitness enthusiast, or at least you were drawn to the fitness world, but that initial step back into society, was it difficult? And what was your first job back?
Yeah, it was kind of difficult just getting back in. Basically, the passion for fitness led me to a health club chain here in Michigan, no longer around, but ended up working my way up and managing 4 different clubs over the next couple of years. But it was interesting, but it wasn't a great experience. What I found was we weren't helping people. It was just all sales, cutthroat, commission-based. There was weeks I lost money because it was all commission and people came in and canceled. So I got a little disillusioned with the fitness industry for the 2 years I was working in this chain, so got out of it and then just went down regular job paths and got involved with a logistics company and worked my way up to a vice president of marketing in a local logistics company for a number of years after that.
So your son is someone that I look up to a lot in the way that he just is, he embodies a lot of the qualities of leadership and of, being a hard worker and being a man of your word and having integrity. What is it about you that you think made you rise through the company so quick? Because there's a lot of people that, their entry-level position, they stay with that for years and they never move up. I'm not shocked at all to hear the fact that right when you got back into that company, you rose through the top. What is it about you that you think makes that the case?
Yeah, back then I would say, because I've grown so much since then and I'm growing every day, back then I would say I credit my dad, hard work ethic, stay with it, drive. I would do anything to get the job done. And I always believed, I know it sounds old school, but I believe when someone says something, they do it. And that's what I lived by. So I did. That's a good point. I did. I'm not blowing my own horn, but I did grow up quickly and became the youngest vice president of a 40-year-old company. So it was a logistics company in downriver and climbed up kind of quickly, so it was a lot of fun. So I would say back then it was more the basic traits, I'll call them. Not easy, but basic. Work ethic, focus, doing what you say, those kinds of things.
So now, Chris, I want to turn it over to you for a minute. So you've probably witnessed your father, having all these qualities, moving up through the business world, being a man of his word, doing what he says. How was that like for you as a child? What type of impressions did that make on you? And then, just speaking on those qualities in general.
Yeah, and I definitely got him super strong from my dad. Just passion, just knew I was destined for greatness from a young age because of him. I had that belief that he always told me, if another man can do it, you can do it. And now that was just beat into me, that if anyone else is successful, that's just another human. It's another man. You can do this too. You can have anything you want. So I grew up with an abundance of opportunity, passion, growth in front of me. I knew I was destined for greatness from being around him. But I think in terms of some of those qualities he mentioned early on, it's kind of ironic because as a young performer, I think a lot of those traits that allowed him to rise in that original company, we both were kind of on this obviously him way before me, but on this leadership journey together. And I think a lot of that, what it takes to personally grow that he mentioned, that hardcore work ethic, knowing that you can get shit done no matter what, that kind of, it really flips you on your head when you start working with and through people, of course. So as we enter that leadership journey, it's a great trait, but almost a handicap when it comes to leading people. So that was a big part of our learning curve, was knowing that you can get anything you want done by yourself, but now how do you do it through people? And I think we both, him getting hit in the face with that realization of, multiple locations, multiple things, multiple people. You just got to shift everything. Was so impactful to see that journey at a young age, for me to witness him go through that transformation of I'm the guy getting it done to how do I get it done through people and through teams. So that was an incredible thing to witness from my side.
And where does that spirit or that energy come from? Because some people just seem to have it and it's innate, you know what I mean? But they just have that grind for life. Where did that come from with you?
Yeah, really what Christopher's talking about is after that logistics company journey, when I knew I wanted to do something on my own and I wanted to get back to fitness and thought I could do it better.
The entrepreneurial fire was just...
Yeah, and no entrepreneurs ahead of me in my family. I'm not picking on my dad, did very well, but there was no one ahead of me. In fact, they told me not to. Too risky. I was making six figures. What are you, crazy?
Old school Union Detroit car guys, just get a job, take care of your family. Happiness doesn't matter. Freedom doesn't matter. Just get a check and take care of your family, and that's it, man.
So no real support from the family side, but I started getting in the books and tapes and looking for mentors right after that. And that's where I hooked up on, The Secret and writing your goals down and talking to other mentors and trying to learn what they did, much like we talked about, James, before the podcast. So after that's when I really knew I started my own. And after the working for the logistics companies, when I started the first gym in 1995 in Northville, Michigan.
That's awesome. So you decide to jump, even though some people around you in your life are telling you, hey, why would you do this? You're in a great position. Just stay comfortable, go home, do the same routine. I was in that same position.
He lost a marriage because of it, speaking of, so.
Yeah, well, how deep you going over there? No, that's all right. I did, well, my first wife just said, you're never going to own a business. She was, there's a lot of other things, but she said, you're never going to own a business as long as you're married to me, and it was kind of the final straw that broke the back, but it was a bunch of other things. So it was tough, because I had no support with the family, and we went through a divorce, but I knew it was inside of me. I had that fire inside of me to do something on my own, so that's kind of how we ventured out.
So you had that belief, and I think that same belief is something that propelled me on my journey. The same reason that you're successful in your ventures, you have to have that belief initially. And a lot of the times it doesn't come from your environment. Like my dad will listen to this podcast. My dad told me it would be the biggest mistake of my life if I left the job that I had at a car dealership because I was doing well. You know what I mean? I was making almost $100,000 a year. He goes, hey, just relax. You're killing it. You'll own this place one day. But then you realize that's not what you want. If your heart's not in something, it's hard to give 100%. It's hard to wake up each morning and show up and give 100%, which makes you feel good about yourself, which then in turn you give 100% again if your heart's not in it. So you launch your first gym, and let's talk about what that was like, because from taking an idea and bringing it to fruition, there's a lot of struggle usually in that process.
Yeah, literally, I had no money and no credit. And luckily in Northville found a couple of landlords that were just becoming landlords. And we're still there now. Since 1995, we still have a gym there. But they kind of let me in without checking the financials and doing some of the diligence. So I kind of snuck under the radar and got a lease signed. And then I had $40,000 in retirement, liquidated that. My tax people were saying, why? And I liquidated that and threw everything at this little gym in Northville and started it in 1995, a little family business. My wife was home.
And you still had your job at the time too.
I did because I had a sick wife and two children, and it was just look. I'm not. Other people have done greater things than me, but I'm just saying it was certainly an uphill battle, and I can see why my father and friends and support group thought I lost my mind. But off we went. And started in 1995, the first gym.
What was the name of the place?
It's called Water Wheel Health Club.
Water Wheel Health Club.
We still are there under a different name now, and so that speaks a lot since 1995, and we made it grow. So it was about 11 years struggle there, learning. Like you said, James, all I had was passion and very little knowledge about business. So it's like I feel like I was in a mat every day, getting beat up and learning. Street education's tough, and I'm still learning all the time. But I got beat up pretty bloody over the next 11 years, and but struggled by. And Christopher was running around stealing stuff as a young kid, and my wife was there doing towels and watching. It was a typical all family-in business, and then I finally just kept going with it, and then another gym, huge gyms opened around me, and I felt like we lost our competitive advantage. So that's when I teamed up with another franchise called Planet Fitness in 2005. We switched that gym to a Planet Fitness in 2005.
So I want to talk about what it was like for you growing up in the gym environment. Your father is the entrepreneur. He's the leader of the place. That that's your family's place. There's a certain amount of pride in that. Like I see it in Stacy's son, Braden.
Right.
He comes in here and he goes like, this is our place. And, what was that like for you? And what lessons do you think you pulled from that point in your life? Because a lot of people don't have the doorway in their mind for potential. And that's what keeps them away from doing great things in their life. You witnessed a man that rolled the dice, that really put himself on the line, but built to be a very successful empire later on.
Right. I think back on that so often because it's just, now that I'm finally at this age where a lot of the stuff my dad was doing, he was doing, it's just, I constantly am going back to like my mom and being like, gosh, what was that when you guys knew you finally like had enough money to just cover your bills for a month? I'm finally getting to that stage where I'm kind of in that same boat, even though it's a much different level of comfort and everything else because of the life they provided. But to be in that phase of my life where I'm looking back and asking so many questions because it fascinates me. But I mean, growing up, it was so cool. But just to know that he owned something made me think that it's you just whatever you love, you just build it, own it, do it. And I think that came in pretty strong. I love that feeling. But to me, it was just what he did. It was a lot of work. I mean, he still made it very special when we were together, but I remember it was just a constant grind, constant battle. And I remember there was a time when my parents couldn't afford a car, or my mom needed one, so he used to bike to work and tell people it's just because he was into fitness. It's because they couldn't afford a car, man. I mean, it's just
walk in the snow, and they said, "Man, you're committed to fitness."
I remember.
I said, "Yeah, I am," but we had one car, and she needed it that day to take someone to the doctor.
There was some we had one family night on Thursdays of the week, and that's it. I mean, it was so none of my school things. I was lucky enough to have a mom that was super committed, but I just grew up in that environment, and I think that's why we talk about just seeing the role of the entrepreneur in the family and the leader in that way was so special. But I mean, there was this good stretch where you would go at 5 a.m., open your gym, then go to your work, your regular job, then come back and close. And I mean, it's just that story where you hear, my parents, immigrants working 18-hour days or whatever, and you think, gosh, how can people do that? It shocks me that he was able to do that with a family, because I know how perfect my life is and efficient for my success without anything, no commitments, no anything. And he had a sick wife, 2 kids, small condo. I mean, I'm just like, how the hell did he make it happen, man? And he always has debt and about 20 maxed out credit cards, but it fascinates me.
I had a great partner, my wife. She was right. I mean, you can't do that with a family.
That's what I was about to bring up.
Yep. Ellen was at my side. I mean, many cold days, she would come out in winter, load the kids up, take them to school, and the car would be gone because I couldn't walk or bike. And she's like, "Where's the car?" I'm like, "Oh, I couldn't get to work." So we did a lot of battles together and fought that battle for about 11, 12 years as an independent gym.
Now, that must have been an absolutely crucial difference, going from someone that wasn't very supportive, that wasn't going to stand by your side. Because I tell you what, you almost lose your mind trying to chase success sometimes, because you're giving every single bit of your soul to try to be successful. And if you've got someone around you that is just, eating away at you on top of all the other stresses that can, come up in life, it's near impossible. And I think the people that you surround yourself with are vital to your success as a human being and as an entrepreneur. So you noticed a massive difference once you cut out a little bit of I don't want to say negativity because I could be disrespecting.
Just different lifestyle expectation. And it's funny because if they were together today, I mean, he's still that man today, regardless of the success, whatever cushion there may be that he's built now. That fires. He's still the same scrappy entrepreneur to this day, and he will always be. And so, I mean, you got to have a lifelong partner, because that fire inside you, it's not about that business till we get it going. It's just a lifelong philosophy, mindset, who you are as a person. So he needed a lifelong partner to be on that journey.
One thing I want to circle back to is you mentioned that, there was books, tapes, seminars, inspirational speakers, because I have a lot in my life that I really look up to and that I think in a weird way have shaped me into the man that I am today. Who are the people for you that made a big impression, and why do you think, they spoke to you so well?
Yeah, and real quick, I wanted to ask too, because it fascinates me how much access we have now. Like, he really had to go out and get a tape or order something off an infomercial or something. So he had to seek this stuff out. It was not nowhere near what it is today. The internet wasn't even around. I mean, it's like,
nowadays, that is something that is a very bizarre part of our society. The amount of information, the access to anything that you need is at your fingertips. You can have inspiration, you can have motivation, you can learn from people but we don't.
I know.
Almost like it's been made so easy that it's like, maybe. I don't know if I feel like it. Back in the day, you would have walked all those miles in the snow, and found an infomercial to get the tape that you needed to put you in the right headspace to go to the next part of your business. So who were the people that were influential to you?
Yeah, I mean, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, way back when. Zig Ziglar, I don't know if you heard of Zig. I mean, when Zig said you can get everything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want, I began to think differently. I began to think about setting a goal, writing it down, saying it every morning, even though some mornings you got to drag yourself out and really look up there and say, I'm going to do this, this, this. I'm going to own multiple gyms. I'm going to have this kind of income. I'm going to have this kind of lifestyle. It was brutal to say every day, but all that stuff came from Zig Ziglar. Was a big influence back then. Now it's evolved a lot since then. And again, Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends, Influence People, all those basic books back then that are still relevant today were a big influence on my life early on.
How about you, Chris? Because I know you're huge into listening to motivational speakers. You're constantly, even sending references to me saying, hey, take a look at this.
Right.
Who are the people that are very influential to you?
Right. Well, when we got deep into our leadership journey, my dad read the book 5 Levels of Leadership by John Maxwell that I mentioned on your podcast, and almost any chance I get to speak on leadership, it's the most impactful book, and the most single impactful person to me was John Maxwell that we found throughout the leadership journey there, for sure. But it's just also fascinating to me that, these old principles like we talked about before we got on, how there's so many true threads that connect every success. There's some overlap no matter what. There's some just tried and true trends. But that stuff before it was trendy, like before The Secret and all this, manifesting and envisioning and all these words that we've grown up around. I mean, to see that back then and have the conviction he had, and my mom still talks about that, him write down his dreams and stuff they found later that it just, they've just blasted through some of those goals. I mean, he's just so big on goal setting and achieving and just excellence, and just drilled that into us. It's just and my mom is the most supportive angel in the world. So to have those two sides, we're always beyond lucky. But I mean, it was just that drive for excellence and the drive to just grow and be better and not be the lid on yourself or your organization. So my dad was big on just learn from anywhere, but he got me around the great mentors. So everyone I have is through him, or the people he's put me around have been super influential in that area.
So one of the things I want to bring up is, what do you think are your daily or weekly or even monthly practices that keep you on track now? Because you've found success. And a lot of times when people set goals, they set them too low, and then they get to that success level and then they start slipping. But you have to have a practice that keeps you kind of aligned with your vision. What are those things for you?
You do. And if I may, James, just to go back to the single gym, I mean, you get to a lily pad, then you can't see anything until you get to that lily pad. You probably know that in your life. You think you see everything you get to it. When you get to that lily pad, a bunch of other things open up. That single gym, really, if I could just back up for a minute, because Chris is kind of bringing the leadership piece in, really happened in my third gym, because I was doing everything on my own. I'm a doer, like we talked about with you before the podcast. Just get everything done, work, I don't care, I'm all in, 24 hours, doesn't matter.
Outwork anyone, yeah.
But what I found in gym number 3 was, that's not going to fly, because I can't do it anymore. So I had to change my whole way of thinking. That took me to a whole different journey that I consider what I am in now. I really consider my whole life committed to employee engagement and leadership. Now, whatever that we align with business ventures that we have, several other ones, but they have to align with my passion. But I don't consider that the end result. The result is where we're in the people engagement business, and we do fitness. Where people engage the business, but we sell Smoothie King. We're in that journey. John Maxwell, I went and met him I would recommend him in every which way. Lencioni, all those books are phenomenal. But talk about employee engagement. I mean, you can read any Harvard study you want. 85% of employees aren't engaged. So I mean, what I did for the first up to the third club was I would go into the club and train them, write another memo. They don't know what they're doing. I got to teach them better. I have books of memos, books of training, threatening emails, on and on I went. And I realized I'd rather have an engaged employee that's half trained than an unengaged employee that's fully trained. Now, in our field, not if you're doing nuclear or something like that, because you can end up with death threatening. So I really changed my whole way of thinking in club number 3 and devoted my life till today, a student of employee engagement, leadership, bringing people with you. And that's really where we began changing. That's how we got to, Planet's up to almost 40 gyms now, and we have other businesses going, and that's really because of the great team and the people that are doing the work.
That's something that I want to comment on, and I want to hear your opinion on, is I've always had trouble delegating, because I'm the type of person that if I do something, I know I'm going to get it done the right way, and I'm going to be strict about the quality, and I'm going to make sure that the final result is what I want and what represents my brand. And I've had a very hard time, and I've been trying to transition. I've actually learned a lot from you. I'm trying to transition into trusting my teams more and getting the right people in place that carry the same type of commitment to the cause that I do, but it's very difficult because it's extremely hard to find people that want to tie themselves into purpose. A lot of kids my age and younger, I hate to say this, but they almost lack purpose. They don't really feel engaged into what they're doing, so they're not giving 100%. They're doing enough to get by, right? You know what? You collect your paycheck so that you can go do what you'd like to do. But there's a science to the fact of how do you take someone off the street that walks in your door and make them not only, a good employee, but a phenomenal employee. Speak a little bit about that, both of you guys, just because I think that is a secret for any business on earth, is engaging their people and making them have the same vision or passion.
Yeah.
I'll just say one thing, Chris,
go ahead.
real
Yep.
quick, because I have 3 or 4 mentors today, and I always encourage people. I'm sure you do, James. I find people, I seek them out respectfully. I'll go anywhere, do anything to get around a handful of mentors that I trust, that have already been the journey there further ahead of me. I had the exact same question at store number 3. And here's what my mentor, Joe Pepe, said to me in Connecticut, and I give him all the respect. He said, Chris, first off, you're never going to have that happen. You're never going to find someone do as well as you. You have a choice. If you keep it small, and you can do it that way, if you want to scale it, go to 85%. That's the gold standard. If someone's doing it 85% as well as you, would you be happy with that? And I said, I'd like to get 90. He said, well, maybe 85. That's a decision you got to make. Look, I'm not picking on my team, but no one's going to go that extra mile because they're not tied in as much. So I understand that. So first off, I have to get my mind right and say, okay, I'm going to bring a bunch of people along to get 85 or 90% as well as I do it, and build them along the journey and bring them with me. That was a turning point for me, because I don't think you can be 100%.
Right. Yeah. And something my dad always said, and of course you can have one of something and be a great leader. And so nothing against that, but my dad always told me it's just hard to make money at one of anything. If you were trying to do something great at a big scale and change a lot of employees' lives in what we do, a lot of franchise models, 20, 25 employees a store, we wanted to do stuff on a big scale. So it really hits you when you jump from that first location to the second, that it really goes from my performance to other performance. And I just was speaking at a Smoothie King to one of our best managers there and said, your job now comes, it changes from you being you to creating you. It's a whole different, every skill that got you to where you are as a success, you now have to stop doing that and create it in others. Your value to the organization is reproducing yourself, not performing. Like, what's more valuable to me? Your well-performing store or your ability to just pump out more of you? If you can do that for a company, you can have anything you want. And that's what my dad showed me, and as we deadended into that of, at one location, 9 to 5, I can work every day, keep the standards where I want, do everything, be in control, make it excellent, keep the culture, champion everything. But the second you go to that second location, you literally can't be there, or you're 24/7, you dead end into people. Every single thing dead ends into people. So everything is about, how do I get the engagement, the buy-in, get what he said. It's not mine, so they're never going to love it like I do, but how do I engage them in their own way? How do I get them bought in? And everyone struggles with those hard delegation questions. But we started to see the magic of, people, we have to get over the mindset too, that when we delegate, we feel like we're somehow lightening our load, or people think we don't want to do it, or this or that. We have all these misconceptions, but you forget the fact that when you delegate, the engagement they get from taking ownership, learning, making it more than a job. So it's not what you mentioned, just collecting a paycheck. We always say we want the paycheck to be the least important thing they get. So what we find is when you engage them through their own specific values and their own skills, you get just engagement goes through the roof. So it's no longer delegating because it's a task. It's delegating because of engagement, more tools to raise that engagement that my dad was talking about. So,
yeah, I mean, I think pay remains 4th or 5th on
Yep.
the list of people. Well, the reason they leave jobs today, it hasn't changed much in the last 20
Yep.
years. So it isn't the pay. It's about getting in fulfillment, understanding their roles. And there's a lot of levers and tools that we use for that, James.
Yep.
I was going to say, without just asking you to lay out your business model, would you say there's any certain, maybe a couple key things that you look for?
Yeah. Why don't you tell them about when you read 5 Levels the first time and that kind of journey?
I started looking at CEOs. And it's like a championship team. It's not just a talent, right? I mean, the talent's a big part of it, but it's chemistry, it's leadership, it's making them work. I understand at the pro level, the talent level is only 5 or 10, 6% difference. So what's the X factor? So I started watching CEOs coming to, like this recent CEO, Ford, coming from different areas of Apple. What do they know about building cars, and why are they there? I realized that, again, I had to turn my thinking around. It wasn't about that. What they were good at was figuring out how to engage people and get them fulfilled and help bring the best out of people. I mean, 85% engagement level, 85% of the people are doing just enough to get by. That's scary to me. I mean, he's got, I don't know how many employees Chris got one of his ventures in Planet Fitness. That means we get like 10 people fully engaged out of several hundred. I mean, it's very scary. So the 5 levels was an eye-opener, went and seeing John Maxwell. But the one tool I've taken away from that I would answer your question directly, James. There was one thing anyone would take away that changed my trajectory was, it's going to sound ridiculous, but we call them value sessions. Once a month, and everybody in the organization, yes, even our cardio cleaner in Benton Harbor, maybe we can't take him or her out because she's on midnights, but I can go by with a donut and a coffee and sit down with him or her, and I ask them this, there's 40 values, tell me what the top 3 values are in your life right now. And we go through this conversation. Once we identify the values, if it's family, trust, whatever, then the next time we meet, we talk, has anything changed in your values? And we talk about your values, and we look for ways to manage people differently. For instance, my incentive, I'm a big coffee guy, so my incentive back when was I'm going to buy everybody a Starbucks card that reaches a level. Well, she doesn't even drink coffee. Well, maybe she'll give it to someone. I mean, that's ridiculous. What I had to understand was, and maybe Christopher told you those examples, this person wants to be an event planner eventually. This person's family was her number one. She's a single mom at home. How am I going to motivate her? A Starbucks card, or how about this? You take off 2 hours early, I'm going to work for you, go home, be with your child, and I'll make it paid. Did I pull a lever to increase her engagement? So we're looking for levers all the time. All of us as leaders are not worrying about making smoothies or making sure things are clean. That's part of it. But we're more important is what levers are we pulling to get people engaged and feeling part of it so we can go get them up a little bit more. I mean, if it's 50% engaged, if I can get 10 or 20% more engagement out of my team, that's huge.
That's massive. Yeah. Absolutely. Plus, it shows that you care about people, that you're invested in them more. You're actually taking the time. The head of the company is taking the time to meet with all the employees and show them that, like, your voice matters. That's huge. Yeah. That alone.
Maybe not just me and all of them, I don't want to be clear, but you get the top exec team to do it, and we'll do what we can.
With their direct reports. Every employee with their direct reports.
If your value was, I'd like to see the owners of the team. Now, guess what?
Yep.
Okay, here comes Christopher because that's your value. So we just manage it that way. But a perfect world, once a month, everybody's sitting down to talk about their life. I care about you. I mean, think about that cardio cleaner. She's got a headset on at midnight. She's cleaning treadmills every day with loud music playing for 3 hours. How boring can that get? Now, but I come there once a month, and so, or the manager does, or the regional, or my executive team, and says, here's some donuts. I can't get you out of here because it's weird time, but tell me how your life is going. And we talk for 20 minutes. She's going to feel. I mean, come on, you're doing it because it's the right thing to do, not just because you want more engagement, but that's called caring for people. What do you say, Chris? Right. Nobody cares how much you.
I love that quote. Yeah, people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. Simple zinger, man. And also the other favorite quote he's beat into me that I say almost every interview too is that, management is like checkers and leadership is like chess. Management is a very specific, treat everything the same because it's all getting my goal done. And chess is every piece is different, moves different. I got to know how they move, why they move, what makes them move, what their value is to the organization, and lead them completely different. And I just love also the example of someone's top value of independence versus teamwork. It could be that simple. How different are you going to treat and lead those people to get? Imagine if you got the independent person on teams and the team person on independent jobs, the engagement's going to be ultra low. So, I mean, just people are always wondering, can you help me? Can I trust you? Do you care about me? All those questions are what you should be answering as a leader, not the usual assume your motivations are theirs. It's a trap everyone falls into. I'm hungry. I want to build an empire. I want to get money. So I'm just going to attract people like that or assume that's what people want. And it's just never going to happen at a large scale with diverse people.
And to be honest, I think the conversation is starting to shift between leadership and management because I remember when I was coming up in the dealership, they ruled by the fear of you losing your job. If you don't perform, we're going to replace you. If your numbers aren't at this level, you're going to be out of here. You didn't think that they cared about you at all. You were simply, a part of a machine. And if you operated correctly, you could stay and you'd be paid accordingly. If not, you're out of there. And I remember I learned a lot from that company. It's Champion Chevrolet right up the road. I learned so much from them because I could see the disdain for management from the employees. Yeah. Even if they didn't show it to the managers show it to the owners, they would do just enough to get by, and they almost had no respect for the people because it's like, man, you would just fire me and put me out on the streets with my family. If I make a mistake, you're not going to guide me and teach me and help me grow. And I remember being a young kid, early 20s, watching the way that they would treat people, and then I would watch the secondary effects, and I would see the people that would give half effort anytime the boss wasn't looking because they didn't feel appreciated at all. So I feel like people are starting to learn that. They're starting to say this management thing needs to go. Leadership is the future. It almost goes to another quote similar to what you said is like people don't remember what you said, but they remember how you made them feel.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
James, you're talking about culture is what's not spoken. And what you're talking about there at Champion is culture. And people, that culture will catch up to you. Even if you're not trying to create a culture, they created a culture there. And the culture is not what they want. And eventually, it will get a tipping point where you will not succeed and certainly not scale. But the key is we as leaders, and Christopher and others, the work is really on us more than ever, because we can't be the lid. We got to learn and grow, know when to pull the levers and when not to, make mistakes along the way. It's a huge task to undertake that, but I really believe that's the future.
Yeah,
that's the
and what you described exactly, James, is referred to level 1 leadership in that 5 levels book, which is positional. You do something because I say so. And unfortunately, in a lot of jobs like that, who do they promote? The best performer. So what are they going to do? Perform. It has nothing to do. Leadership position has zero to do with your personal performance. You got to put people in there that know how to lead people. It's a whole different skill set than being a personal performer. So systems like that, and just like the fitness industry, what do? They just get the best performer, turn them over, because they don't have the people skills. They're just trying to do what got them there and perform. They don't understand it shifts from personal performance now to getting others to perform. Entire different skill set, intention, pace, everything's different.
I remember reading something about Henry Ford where he was getting criticized by some people from the newspaper saying that like he didn't deserve to be in the position that he was in, and they had asked him some questions. You know the story I'm telling. Basically said, asked him a question that he didn't know, and he just picked up the phone next to him, called up the guy that could answer it, and the guy came up, and that's speaking on the exact same story that you guys are telling right now, is finding the right people to be a part of your team to grow your vision and grow your project, instead of just demanding results or ruling by, well, I'm the boss and this is what I said, and if you don't do it, get out of here. Right. We have to change those conversations.
Right.
The other thing that I wanted to go into a little bit is when you start to scale and you get bigger and bigger and bigger, you're taking so much more on your plate. How do you keep that personalized touch on each store? Because you guys now are managing, we were talking before the podcast, you got stores, or you got business operations in multiple states. You have a ton of different businesses.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there's something incredible about what you do, that it's almost able to be transposed into multiple businesses. Like, you're not even really in the fitness business anymore at all. Mm-hmm. You are purely in the successful leadership and team building business. You know what I mean? From what I can hear from the story. So how do you scale something so important to the success of a business to such a large level without losing those personalized touches?
Yeah. Let me tee up that. So, because I just did this interview with Business Insider. She was asking just the stuff, and 100% it was my dad's system. And I still, to this day, I've been around so many books, so many great people, and this is still one of the most impressive just kind of roadmaps for success. But what we found was, like he mentioned, CEO of Ford, going to wherever, it's so little to do with the product or the industry. It was all about the same issues were plaguing every business every time there was an issue. It had to do with trust, conflict, accountability, interpersonal stuff, emotional intelligence, interpersonal communication, meeting tensions. These are all the issues that we deal with constantly. We've never let go of an employee because a number thing or this or that. It's always the same issues are trust issues, vulnerability issues, conflict. Can we have healthy conflict? Do we trust each other? Are we aligned? How aligned are we? All that stuff that is just so tough and not sexy necessarily in terms of leadership, but that's what makes it work. So my dad has just become devoted his life to becoming an expert at how do you create that roadmap for ultra alignment, starting with why, how do you build values, how do you do all this stuff? So to answer that question, as you scale, to front load that infrastructure, we carried the executive team for Smoothie King, for example, for a year before we had one store. We had a year process of why do we exist? What's our mission statement, our hill we're going to die on, our rallying cry? What are our values? How do we get ultra alignment? What does success look like? What are our top 3 things we can focus on? How do we just create this obsession with ultra alignment, making your meetings ultra effective? Because that's how we communicate in businesses, through meetings, and those are often a waste of time, frowned upon. That's our game time. That's our playoffs. So how do we get that sharp? How do we get all that stuff better? So when it comes to scaling, you just have to front load that culture piece so strong, because the amount of time I'm able to devote to that team and know that those layers are going to go all the way to the front lines is the ultimate goal. So nothing could be more impressive than just saying, like my dad always says, real success is when you can say, don't ask me about my culture. Go to one of my places and they say, which one? Doesn't matter. Talk to which employee? Doesn't matter. Manager? Anyone. Talk to anyone. Go on a Sunday through the drive-thru and tell me how it feels. So to get all the way down from the top to those front lines, the alignment that takes is just what I've dedicated my life now to just being excellent at, and that's something he's laid out for me. So
and we're not perfect.
No,
we're still working at it. It's a never-ending.
Oh yeah,
never-ending journey. But James, what you said about finding the right people, that's a big part of it. But when I went through mine, I was like, I just had the wrong person. I had the wrong person. I was going through literally 30 of them every month, and I realized maybe I need to look in the mirror. Part of it's me. I mean, I have to find the right people that are aligned with our culture. And then we got to put the tools in place to bring the best out of them. And that's really what we shifted our thought on. And like Chris said, it's all about alignment. The biggest thing is they don't trust you. I mean, how many meetings people don't tell you what they feel? Mm-hmm. And that we're still fighting that now. So you got to you do trust. The value sessions create trust. The off-sites once a year, we do an off-site. We spend the time doing. If you spend more time on that side, we found out, like for instance, I'll give you one example. Christopher, it's early, but they were worried about the drive-through times in one of their concepts. And we can, well, they're not trained well. Let's put another memo up. Let's do all that stuff. We started working over here on the engagement, and this went down. It's not this, that's downstream. But I mean, again, if the employee's not engaged, you can put stuff on the wall all day long. As soon as you leave on Sunday, they're not looking at that. So, you know, we always use our we call them our weakest, we don't mean that, but we'll say our least engaged, our part-timer that works a Sunday afternoon. That's a litmus test. How engaged is he or she, and how does she feel about everything? And those are the tools you want to put in place.
So we're all speaking on like positivity, leadership, all these really feel-good things that everyone wants to speak about, but like, how do you address healthy conflict? Because like one thing I have to do in here as a coach is I have to call people out on bullshit. Mm-hmm. I have to call people out when they're making excuses or when they're flat out underperforming. And that's never an easy road. Like it's great to hear about, all the positivity and all the desires and dreams, but how do you guys tackle when there's a major issue? How do you go about addressing that with that healthy conflict? Because I think that's crucial to success for, a large business.
Let me give you an example. If I don't know what you value, it's going to be difficult. Right now, the CEO of our company that came up in the company does a great job with our Planet Fitness team. His number one value back then was trust. Now, everybody could say that, but there's 40, so you really got to work to get the top 3. Trust. So in other words, if I'm in a meeting and I call him out on something, not going to fly well. It doesn't, because his number one value is trust. And if he breaks down and shuts down, he's not going to tell me what he thinks. So him, I have to manage differently a healthy conflict. I have to pull him aside. I have to come in a little differently. That's where the great leaders in the world, the great CEOs of the world, the great people is they've learned and continue to learn when to pull the levers right for different people. Like Chris said, it's a chess match. You can't just, and I did it many times. I still do it. And Chris sometimes calls me out. And I come in a meeting and just go off, and I've shut down. In fact, he told me that. He goes, well, you did a great job. You shut down the entire meeting because 2 guys, now they're not going to say anything, so I went too hot or they were this. But if you learn he's a CEO, you learn your people, know their values, and try to approach the healthy conflict around their values as much as you can.
Right.
A little softer for this one. I like it direct. It sounds like you and I, James, get along great. If you ask me mine, I'm saying give it to me direct. I'll give it to you direct. Don't ask me if you don't want to hear it, because I'm going to tell you. Same thing I want from you. That's different than someone that might say, trust is mine, or whatever the case may be. So it really is all these tools in your toolbox, trying to do as well as you can, and then keep learning and keep growing and try to apply it.
Right. And then I would also say that's a great point, and it complements what I was going to say was just front-loading the culture piece really also helps accountability, because you're holding them accountable to something they've created and bought into. It's not subjective. It's not, I want it this way. And I already know that if you're not going to, we're trying to win. There's never, yes, we're going to celebrate our wins, but it's going to be, it's going to be a freaking grind. We were going to be dissatisfied in a healthy way, but we're going to be dissatisfied, and we're going to go for 100, and a B manager is not good enough. And if it's a hard on you to make a change and, work extra hours because you got to make a manager shift or something, that's just what we're about. We're going to not stop till we have A pluses at every location. And excellence is everything for us. It's just what we do, who we want to be. So when people buy into that, it's much easier I'm not necessarily holding them accountable. I'm just bringing them back to our core of who we are, what we bought into. I'm like, you guys, we voted on these values, we created these, we bought in together, we just drift away. So I just focus kind of on my job as more of an aligner, bringing them back to that core, because it's not subjective, it's just accountability. It just happens to be my job to hold accountability to the mission, to the values, to the culture. So it takes out that subjective area where I know that it's what we all bought into, and it's just, this is what we're about. And anytime people drift, you just got to bring them back. This is why we were here. This is why we did this. This is why we're doing this and not something else. And our time's important. We're going to be the best. And just reminding people of something they created and bought into is much easier than just holding to a subjective changing target. So my dad is always big on, they got to know the finish line. People want to know the scoreboard and where they lie on it. So you really got to do a lot of that work, a lot of those uncomfortable conversations to lay that out. People just got to know where the target is, where success is, and what that means. So having alignment really makes accountability a much easier piece, because that was something I struggled with being so young, and having employees that are double my age. It's tough to have those conversations, but when you know that there's alignment, much easier game.
But you skipped a step there, Trillium. You said it, but we skipped it, James. The day and a half, 2 days, we took the executive team out, and I acted more as a consultant, and created the values, how we're going to behave. These are non-negotiable values. Anytime 3 or more people meet anyone in our group, we speak the values out loud, and a little bit of a cheery thing, but kind of cool. We live it and breathe it. And if you don't act that way, that's what he's talking about, bring them back to the values that we created collectively and signed off on. We put names on it, said, this is it. I don't care if you're a top performer. If you're not following those values, we got a problem. So that's what he's talking about, is bringing them back to the values of being a championship team. If you read the values,
alignment, yep.
We want to be excellent. If you don't want to be a part of that team where everybody gets a trophy, it's probably not good at his group, because we're going to be, a B's not good enough. There's no good enough. We want to be perfect. We may never get there, but that's, our time's all valuable. That's a value that we have to buy into, and maybe someone doesn't fit into that value, but that's what you're talking about, bringing
Right, and something else that my dad and I love, and something that his biggest value to an organization is this, and I'm trying to learn it a lot too, but we call it mining for conflict, meaning we want conflict. We want to be the best answer. We want a meritocracy where the best ideas thrive. So in a day where things are going okay, you have to have that conflict, because we're trying to be excellent. So there's always conflict. It's easy to say we're doing great, making money, doing this, but that's not enough for us. We want to be the best. So it's a tough battle, but it really is. There's constant conflict, and if there's not, we have to create it. So not only do we avoid those comfortable conversations, I just had to realize that I'm looking for the next uncomfortable conversation is my job. So in a way, it's just kind of created. Yep.
Not create as much as, James, you've been in meetings, we all have. Everybody on this podcast listening to us been in meetings when you feel tightening in your gut, that something's not right. Now you have 2 choices. You can skim over that, which is easily done, or you can face it. And that's what I think Christopher's talking about. When everybody feels that, we have to have and we talked about trust as one of our values. Now that's up to you. We can't push a string. It's got to be 50-50 here. You got to participate. But when you feel that in our gut, we have to not just skim over. We have to stop, take a pause, say, hey, and try to mine for it and bring it out, and hopefully have some conflict. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But if you keep doing that, they know that that's the way it's going to be. We're going to keep bringing that conflict out where it needs to be brought out.
Right.
And to be honest, I mean, you're almost removing animosity, or you're removing these things that people have been pressing down or keeping in their head, because you see that happen a lot. You see that in relationships. You see that in business relationships, where there is an issue, it's not being addressed, and then it gets worse and worse and worse, and then finally there's a blow up and a major problem, where if you initially would have went in and said, hey, this is what we're bringing to the table, and we're mining for these healthy conflicts, you're almost resolving things before the tipping point where there's a major issue.
That's right.
That's a brilliant way of looking at it. Now, do you also see that with this championship mentality, that you get people taking way more pride in who they are and what they do? Because sitting here and listening to it, I'm envisioning the young kid that just makes smoothies at Smoothie King, but he's bought into a championship organization where he knows from the top down we are chasing excellence. And that excellence is going to go with you whether you stay with Smoothie King and move through the ranks, or you venture out into your own business. You know, that excellence is going to become a part of you. Do you notice that it starts to reshape the people?
It does. I mean, you have to have, there's so many tools that we're just throwing out here at random. It's hard because we're not really following a methodical path. But another one is a team development plan, where we lay out from individual contributor all the way to the regional manager the steps you can take to put yourself in a position to make that.
Performance-based, yeah.
That's the word I'm looking for. So we let people know not only are we championship mentality, we appreciate longevity. If you're doing your job and you want to be at the front counter, we got front counter guys who have been there 10 years, doing a great job, contributing, fine. But don't judge if a guy comes on 6 months and puts himself in a position and passes you, because we are a performance-based company. That can be good or bad depending on what you want. We just let people know up front that we appreciate all that, but it's performance-based. What's that mean? That means you put yourself in position on the team development plan, so when an opportunity comes up, you're there and ready. We don't promote without that. So no more getting in a room going, I like her, I don't like him, I like her. First question is he or she in a position on the team development plan? Nope, then no. Because we told her up front 6 months ago, and she never came to anybody. So we have a lot of tools like that make it engaged.
Right, and even in the we consolidate this stuff in an interview where you have exposure to everything we're about. You see all this up front, so you attract a different type of employee because you show them how you're different. And it's just been great because you see even people with,
book club.
Right, a lot of stuff, but it's just great because, not only are we doing something drastically different, because 90% of employees would say, my boss has never even done one thing or never even thanked me or acknowledged anything. We live and breathe that constantly. So it not only is this such a change, but a lot of people have been mismanaged for so long that it's actually uncomfortable. You have to break down these old habits. That's it. They've never seen it. They've heard we're about people, but if that weekend your numbers aren't right, they don't care about people anymore. Or their money's not into those people. Or if you have to take a little bit of a slowdown to develop your people, that's going to pay off in the long run, but it's a short-term hit, they're not going to be willing. So we found we have to break down a lot of even bad habits of mismanagement because it's almost uncomfortable to people because they have been mismanaged for so long. I mean, they've, like my dad said, it's not pay, it's your relationship with your direct report, trust, accountability, conflict, buy-in, engagement. Are you a part of something different, and why, and what are you doing? But it's great. We've had some of those success stories are my favorite when you walk into a store and they just got a list of people who want to meet me and talk about moving up in the company, how this is people dropping out of business college because they're like, this is the real shit I need to know to grow. This is what it's about. This is real people. This isn't a textbook. I'm learning real tools that if I can take anywhere, I will be the most valuable person in that company. It's interpersonal stuff. Like first person we want on any new concept, give me the best leader, the best people person. They can have anything they want because it's so valuable to an organization. So we show people that up front. The interview packet is regulated so everyone gets exposure, that they know what they're signing on to. And so we get that alignment coming on board. We attract a certain type of employee. So hopefully they'll take pride in it because we show them how it's different.
Well, and I tell you what, anyone that actually wants to give their best, they like performance-based things.
That's right.
They like commission-based things. They like being rewarded for their extra work. There's like a lot of talk in the younger generations where you just want everything to be equal and everybody gets the same thing. We're not equal. Like the effort that I might put in every day is completely different than Joe and then John and then et cetera. Some people will be better. Some people will be worse. But I believe in that. I believe in if you're willing to give 1,000%, that should be somehow appreciated or viewed differently than the person that comes up and strolls in. And so when you guys were talking about that, you were hitting the hot button with me going, of course, I would want that. I would want to show that I'm going to be the best person you've ever had in the company. And through that result, you will then value me more. You know what I mean? So I think
we constantly challenging our team to not build a model around a C or D performer, build it around an A performer. See, we've become so watered down. We're just happy to have someone show up and smile and show up on time anymore. So we just think, well, she's good. We're like, no. Build it on the A's. Now, the B or C, D performers won't like it. Maybe don't like any of this. But why waste your time looking for the A's and B performers that want to come in and grow? And that's key. And it's a mindset because, again, you get watered down. Like I said, why do you want to promote her? She shows up on time, she smiles. I mean, we heard this in our meetings, and she's always on time. Okay, then you want to promote her. That's we're like everybody gets a trophy, and I'm not down. I'm just saying that if you want A's, you want to be excellent. You guys know the sports stories. I mean, those championship teams are managed by Jordan going back and saying, "Come on, we need to practice and get the team going." And whatever Brady does, there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that carries in every walk of life. If the culture can work either negatively or positive, in this case, you're trying to get as much positive as you can because the negativity is a B performer always hires a C or D. They always hire one below you in general. So if we got a lot of C performers in your company, they're bringing in D performers. You wonder what's happening. It's just going down, and eventually there'll be a tipping point. So you got to attract those A's, build them, give them the tools they need, and hopefully they'll bring B's and they'll grow to A's.
Right.
I think it makes sense because I think an A sees an A. When they look at somebody, they see another A. It's easy to identify other people that are real. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas like a B and a C, to them, that is maybe top level in their opinion because unless they know they're underperforming.
Right.
So they might scout somebody else and be like, oh, this guy seems like a good candidate. But really, like if you're an elite level athlete, you recognize other elite level athletes and you want to be surrounded by those people. And other people that don't want to put in that type of work ethic, you try to avoid those people because it's almost like infectious in a bad way. You're like, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to do that. One thing I was just down in Tampa for the bare knuckle fight. And this girl that I was staying with, she used to train here at the academy. She was a fighter on the team. Her girlfriend was applying at Orange Theory. I'm going to bring them up real quick. Just to apply at Orange Theory, she had to send a 2-minute video describing why she wants to be in the fitness world, why she's a good fit for Orange Theory, her background. Then she had to fill out this massive questionnaire and do all this other work, upload Google Docs, all these things just to be considered for an interview. And then she had to interview with 3 people from the company. And I was sitting down there watching them do the thing, and I'm going, that's actually brilliant. You know how many people would not take would just not do it. They're too lazy to go through the process, or they're nervous to get on camera. They don't want to go and film that video. You know what you're doing? You are separating the people that aren't willing to go the extra mile right off the bat.
Right.
As she was telling me that, I was going, ooh, that's smart. That's very intelligent. Do you guys do similar things like that where you're trying to almost scout for what you're looking for well in advance and instead of just trying to build the people?
Yes, and I think the highest level of that, which my dad was just kind of getting to, is with like the Jordan stories and the Tom Brady stories, is that's mutual 360 accountability. That's my boss comes in without a name tag, I pull him aside and say, what are you doing? Like that's the gold standards when you get mutual accountability and you start to, so for instance, that 85% disengagement number, that means at a Smoothie King, that's about a manager and maybe one other employee some of the time. You start adding 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that culture is going to become such a strong, substantial, critical mass that it will oust any infectious people. I mean, that's the goal is you get someone who's not the culture. It's the team. It's the team kicking them out. This person doesn't jive. That's not what we're about. They come tell you. You almost get to a critical mass with your culture where it exists so strong that it's its own self-regulating thing. It weeds itself out. It attracts the right type of people. So we do everything we can to screen up front. But the dream is when you get into the system, is it real, and do they see it real? Because a lot of people have so many interview things and they're exposed to so much, but then they get there and it's not it. Or they see the values on the wall, but they don't live it. Or they say trust, but then you see someone doing something they're not supposed to. So when they get into the culture that's living and breathing, that should be self-regulating in a way, which is the gold standard of a culture. Not the top down, but from the 360 from the middle is the dream.
Well, it is to a point. You brought up the A word, the accountability. That has to come in there. You carry a D performer too long, it's not what you say or don't say, it's what you do that creates the culture. And any A performer below that is thinking it's all crock. So the accountability, yes, if someone brings it, Chris is right, somebody should bring it up to the team, but it takes guts to stand by that and handle it, because it's so much easier to let the bad ones are easy to get rid of. The good ones are easy to promote. The middle ones are the ones that give you the trouble. But if they're not following the values, you've got to get rid of them, because it's what you do, not what you say, that creates that culture. So accountability comes in there too on top of all this. That's the struggle.
And these are all things that you can just feel. Like, I'll tie it into the academy. We have a certain energy in this building. It's very family oriented. I mean, you see kids in here every night and moms on the heavy bags and dads on the mats doing jujitsu. And people that don't fit the culture, they just weed themselves out. I actually don't have to say the word. I treat them incredibly kindly. I give respect to every single person. But the people that don't align with the energy in this building, they get themselves away from it, probably because they feel that they don't align to it.
Right, because it's clear and you've created it. Now, what my dad's kind of that quote was, culture is going to happen regardless. It's not just something that you create if it's good or it's not there. You have a bad culture, it's going to happen. It is what it is when you're not there, is the culture. So to be intentional, to have something that really is something that's substantial that you have created, and it's this special living, breathing thing, that's what you're experiencing, is people just feel it, and you've created it and worked hard to be intentional about it and protect it. So you just created it at such a strong level that it just vibrates and takes its own life, and we love that.
But it's never ending. It's a lot of work, like we said, James. It's a lot easier just to do your job sometimes than do what we're talking about here. And I understand the leap, but if you really want to be excellent, this is, in my opinion, studying many great businesses, good to great, the E-Myth, there's a million books that support this, certainly not all that I've come up with. You have to devote leadership, team development, engagement tools. You have to have them to really bring the best out.
So let's totally shift the podcast for a little bit. Let's talk about some of the tough times that you've run into. And we can go all the way back to the very beginning. Like you said, basically someone rolled the dice on you, because a lot of the times we're speaking on very positive things right here. And I hope there's a lot of people out there that want to chase their dream, that go for it. But you run through tough times. What were some of the tough times that you experienced in your entrepreneur life, and what built you kind of into the man that you were today?
Well, I mean, the first 10 years, we made no money. It was just a passion, and oftentimes you get into something for passion and realize in order to continue that passion and help others, you have to make a profit. But that's not many times what. In fact, if many people are getting the business just for profit, I would say, James, I'm sure you would agree, you're probably not longed to be successful because you don't have the passion to go with it. Again, profit's a byproduct of bringing something to enough people and making it a win-win. So really, my tough times were learning those lessons. I mean, in the gym business, it was number things. Number one was, again, I always thought it was, why did she quit, or why didn't she show up, or why did I fire her? It's her fault. It's his fault. It's her fault. His fault. The big learning lesson was when I finally went to Maxwell, and I went through this with him, and he said, we're not good friends. We were in a small group, and he said, "You ever thought about who hired that person? And I'm like, so now when someone goes in our organization now, it's on the person that hired them. It's not the person's fault. How can I say it's their fault when I hired them? Now, sometimes it is an exception, but as a rule, it really is on me and who I brought in, and I should accept that responsibility. So that was a tough lesson for me because I always believed that, hey, just do your job, I'll do mine. Let's get on with it. Why do we got to do this stuff? We all know what we have to do. I told you what to do, but I realized it's not that simple where everybody would do it. So that was a big learning point.
Right. I think a big trap that performers get into is they want someone to prove something before they invest, right? They want to, I'm going to leave my team there. Whoever kind of rises, those are the people I'm going to invest in and spend time with. And it's just leadership is about actively leading the dance. It's extending your hand first. It's before anyone has done one thing. I'm going to invest in them, show them what we're about, just start pouring into them before they've done one thing, proven one thing, done one thing. That's what leadership is about. It's not show me something, then I'll spend some time with you. It really is about going first. And I think that's been a hard part for anyone who's a personal performer is just realizing that it's all on me. Everything from the time I hire them, I gotta extend my hand, lead this dance, and it's just an active thing. Leadership is just being active and being first,
So I can tell you two are completely enveloped in the lifestyle that you live, and you enjoy what you do. You enjoy building people, you enjoy building companies, you enjoy creating atmospheres and cultures. What do your goals look like? Like, what comes next? Because you're already at the point where, by normal society standards, you've absolutely hit a home run. You have what you want. But I tend to find that a lot of people that are on a similar journey, you're almost never satisfied because anytime you break through another barrier, you think, well, what else can I do? Because before I was at this point and now I'm here, what level can I reach? What do your goals look like?
Yeah, well, you can imagine, this goes to the whole team, having a mom and pop business build to 12 locations, and we're on the 38th floor in Boston with Bain Capital, with the ex-governor of Massachusetts talking to Christopher and I and my team, and we're like, what in the heck are we doing here? And they want to buy our company. So, of course, that happened, which is a turning point, and then they sold it again to a huge PE firm. So we've been through two major sales, and what I found at the end of those, when I relaxed and reflected up north and thought about what my next steps were, as you asked, James, was it's a journey. I hate to say, I know it sounds it was a journey that I got excited, and I just wasn't done for the journey. I mean, yes, you want to get there, and yes, look, the guy running the company now, I wouldn't be here without him, came to me and gave me 90 days. He wanted this money. I said, if you're that good, show me. I'm a performance-based company. Why do you have to have it now? He's now the CEO of this company, and he's doing a great job. So, I mean.
Yep. Came on for $40,000 a year.
I'm giving you 90 days. You're performance-based. I'll show you what I can do. You show me what you can do. I shook his hand and said, let's do it. And he did. He's now the CEO. We brought people with us. We've created millionaires collectively in these sales. So it was a journey, and bringing people with you that really got me excited. So I realized it wasn't done. So I went to my children. Christopher's the only one that bit. And we fight a lot, but it's good. And we started another family office, and now we're off in a couple other ventures, and we're really in the middle of the journey and enjoying it. So I just wasn't done, James. Our goal is really to do it again and again a few times, and bring more people with us and enjoy the journey.
And probably even more efficiently, even more effectively, because you're way better now than you were before. You know what I mean? And you can see the passion in your eyes, both of you, for what you do. You know what I mean? And what would you say your goals are?
Yeah,
Chris?
I mean, it's when my dad says that, it's so special. And I take a lot of heat for my dad from people who think he's got. What's enough? Why isn't he stopping? And why is he doing this again? And more risk? And his financial planner is always yelling at him. I mean, people just view it as risk, and why? And you've already done this. Why are you putting it on the table again? And that's why I always say, or people who think my dad never stopped to enjoy his stuff, or never enjoyed the achievements, or was never got to just stop. And I'm like, gosh, if he died tomorrow, I'd be so happy for him, because at his last breath, he'd want to be in a meeting, building something, doing something he loves. He's just so passionate about the process, about learning new businesses. It gets him fired up, gets him out of bed. And so my goals have kind of shifted from milestone achievements to just loving my day. So the way I structure my day is so important to me that I'm like, gosh, if I live every day like this, I don't even know which heights I'm going to go to, because I'm just going to blow through so many of these traditional goals, because we're doing what we love, learning business, learning people, devoting our lives to this, and you realize that there's just no end to this. So it's almost addictive in the way that that there's never an end. You can never be good enough for your people. You can never be the best leader possible. But that pursuit of it is what gets me out of bed, because like you said, you get that momentum of, gosh, I'm getting better. I'm who I am at these meetings. Everything I think before a meeting, I'm now saying in meetings. It's just all these new connections start to come together, and you're like, gosh, all this momentum, I'm getting better. I'm changing people's lives, bringing people with you. It just gets addictive, and it's that's it.
Yeah. I don't want, to take thank God, again, this is the team that did this in the first sale to put aside a couple million and hand it out to divide it up amongst the company for no strings attached. I mean, they're just incredible moments, We like to do that more and bring more people with us. It's fun.
Yeah,
it's
just
a great journey.
just to share, and I mean, like to have these people, I'm constantly reminded of how lucky I am to have these parents, this support. That's why my passion is really shifted to how do I help entrepreneurs who don't have that support or who have negative views of risk or these things in their lives, because I know how valuable it was to have parents like that. So my big passion is helping, teaching at classes, doing whatever, interacting with the high schools, because it was so valuable to me to see this support and to have that. That's been just a huge passion of mine as well, because it's all due to that. It's due to this opportunity, to just the mindset, and so few people have it. Everyone who comes to me, it's, well, my parents want me to go to college and they don't want risk and this and that, and there's only one path to success, they think, and school and paycheck and this and that, and that's all they have. So to see there was more to this life was the key to everything that I have,
And when you feel that type of passion within you, and this journey is resonating within your spirit, you want to see it in other people. You just do. When you're on your pursuit of happiness and you're living intentionally and you're crushing goals and you're feeling what that brings to your life, you want to see that in others. If you're a good person, right?
Yeah.
You want to see other people enjoy that.
Yeah.
Les Brown is a famous speaker,
yes,
and Les Brown said a quote that has always stuck with me. Where he said, "What you become in the process is more important than the dream." Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what you guys are speaking on. Like, what you have become through this tireless pursuit is worth all of it. You know what I mean? The type of people that you've become, the faith that you brought into your life, the energy that you have in your soul now, and then you're giving that to others. And how many people's lives have changed because of what you've done?
Right.
It always seems scary, James. You've been so successful yourself, but that's what it's about, moving from success to significance. Mm-hmm. And that's making more difference in people's lives and helping the people, attracting the A performers. I want to be with warriors. Nothing excites me. I'm very impatient. I got to work on it. I'm still, when I'm with the people that won't speak up or do that stuff, you got to work through them. It's on us, not them. But I'm very impatient. That's my biggest thing is I love to be in a room of warriors figuring stuff out, nothing we can't conquer. And warriors will do anything and speak honestly and be direct and those things. So that's what gives me my energy.
That's right. Yeah, and last to add on that, and to be in a room with all the managers that helped us get there at Planet Fitness after the first sale. My dad said every club manager, and these kids in their 20s, we're going to give every one of you $20,000, and if you're here with us next year, we're going to give you another $20,000. To be around seeing the results of business and those, just to share that, to show what it means to be responsible and to feel the weight of leadership. I remember my dad had a leadership coach that came to me and he goes, I've worked with CEOs, leaders of countries, everything. I've never been around someone that feels the weight of leadership like your dad. And it's just that care for your people, and to be around to see what responsibility really means, to see what people's lives in your hands means, and to have that wake up and drive you every day, that dissatisfaction with yourself because you want to get better to make your people's lives better, to actually see it full circle. That's why I'm addicted to this process of start something, grow it, reward your people, give them opportunities, and do it again. And that's what gets us out of bed at this point, is that process to do it all against all odds, to have all that adversity and everything and go through and get better every time with better people. It's huge.
And you can't fake being authentic, in my opinion. A lot of people, like in the sales world especially, they'll like put on a spiel or things to try to present themselves as something. You just can't fake being authentic. So if you're authentically loving what you do and you genuinely are trying to help people, people feel it. It's way beyond your words. It's in your energy. They're almost affected just by your presence around them. I remember back like when I was working at the dealership, I watched other people try to get the same results that I did, and they were never close. And in my mind, it was always just because they didn't genuinely care about the people at all. They were just treating them as like, what can I sell this person? What can I do this? What can I tell them? And I was just, who are you? Get to know me, come and see me. This is my job. This is where I'm at. Here's my card. Call me up. You know what I mean? And people built a personal connection with me. And through that, it was funny because I would watch these other people searching for like, why is he successful? Why is he making double what, the people doing the same exact job are doing? And to me, it was just like, you're just not authentic.
Yeah.
You guys don't genuinely care about the people that walk in the door at all. You're just looking at it as like, what dollar sign can I pull from this?
Yeah, they won't follow you, James. Like we say, if no one's following you, just as a leader, you're just taking a walk by yourself because they're not following you because you're not transparent, you're not genuine. They'll figure it out eventually, like you said.
Yeah,
it's only short
and it's funny you said that. There's a famous Harvard business study that the number one most important leadership trait is authenticity. So, I mean, that was, just remember, I was in a seminar the other day, and that's still been there, man. Sure as hell is.
Yeah. A lot of people now that make mistakes, and you just got to stay. Transparency is tough. That comes with being authentic, and that's tough to do. Many people don't do that. I mean, you make a mistake. What people want to hear is like, I made a recent mistake with the marketing, and I'm not saying I do anything right, but they're all happy because I told you, and you want to say something like, yeah, but this, or yeah, but I said, I said to the meeting, I said, I've never been more wrong. I hope I continue to be wrong because we're all winning. So you got to be able to be transparent, and that's not easy to do sometimes when you're competitive and you're a warrior. Those two are opposites.
100%. Warriors have egos. Warriors want to dominate. Like, I want to win at anything I do. If we play, pool, I'm going to try my absolute best to win. Yeah. So it is hard to be like, you know what? I messed up. I was wrong, but I'm going to do better. But I think there's a secret to that. Yeah. Absolutely.
That's why we talk about, we've shifted our view of trust is so important, but we've shifted our view of trust in a business setting has traditionally been, I trust you to do your job and you trust me to do mine. We found that so insignificant. That does not matter, because if there's an issue, trust you to do your job doesn't mean anything to me. Trust is really about vulnerability. It's about, how can I say, guys, I'm overwhelmed, I need help. That's it. Because I'm a performer. And the second someone says, we respect you more if you say, I'm overwhelmed. We've had so many stories of these performers, and we know they're stressed. They don't say anything, then they leave and say, it's not you. I love you guys, but whatever else, personal stuff. It's just, gosh, could have been solved with communication. What can we do better to let you come to us and let you know we're here and trust us in that way? Vulnerable trust is huge, because that's where it comes from. That I was wrong. I don't know. I need help. That stuff is what builds trust. Not we're all going to be individual badasses.
Well, then I can also trust you to admit when you're wrong. That's right. How good does that feel?
That's right.
There's very few things I dislike more than someone that will refuse to admit when they were wrong. Mm-hmm. Because then how can you trust that person? They're never going to be genuine with you and tell you, like, you know what, man, I messed up here. Exactly. I need some help. We need to shift the conversation, because in our society, vulnerability, like even showing emotions a lot of time is viewed as very what a weak person. Vulnerability is strength. If you can flat out admit to your mistakes and still go out there the next day and try to give 1,000% going, yeah, I messed up there, but I'm going to be even better now. I learned lessons from that. That's invaluable to a company.
Yeah, I would venture to say that all of your biggest failures that you would say are probably around either you or their vulnerability. Looking back, every failure I've had as an employer, as a leader, has probably been an issue with that vulnerable side of trust. I mean, it's all been conflict because of your ineptitude at building the vulnerable, meaningful, purposeful connection. I mean,
they don't look. It's a never-ending study to get that kind of leadership, because I had to understand the perception reality check.
Intention, perception gap. Yep.
My intention was this. You perceived it as this. And guess what I would do in the past? I would fight about it. That's not what I meant, Chris. That's how I felt. And I would fight with them and think, they're idiots. That's not what I meant. What I had to realize was, it doesn't matter what my intention was. It matters what his perception was. End of story. How do you make that? That came from learning, reading, growing. They don't teach us in most schools. No one's learning how to lead people and develop people. I mean, the Dale Carnegie stuff is so valuable. That is the stuff you got to continue to learn and grow, because till that light went off in my mind, every time that went up, hey, you went in the club, and after you left, she was crying. What do you mean she's crying? Well, you were kind of rough with somebody. What? She's crazy. I wasn't doing that. It's on her. And I realized over time was, wow, that's how she perceived it. She must have a different value system, a different thinking, and I had to put it on me. So that came from my education. I'm learning every day, reading tapes, listening to tapes, reading books every day. It never ends, because you got to get to be a better leader to know when to do those things.
That's right. Yeah, that's why it's when you pride yourself on your top traits, like we've been talking about, is kind of a theme through this whole thing of, I'm a performer, I'm hard work, no one can outwork me, I'm going to get this shit done mentality. That's why it's so hard to go from championing those values that got you successful to becoming just kind of a chameleon. Just my job is just adapting to fit the puzzle piece of what that person needs at this specific time on their specific values. So it's just like, gosh, how do I go from, I'm so prideful of my qualities that can make me successful, but just that flip of, gosh, just it's adaptability, 80, and it really is, like you said, every study that comes out to 85% emotional intelligence is your success as a leader. Very little product knowledge or industry knowledge. It really is 85% or more emotional.
I've never made a smoothie.
That's right.
Never made a smoothie. I respect people that do. We never did. Probably never. I mean, we would, but we never do it. So that's not what We want to help the
Right.
people that are there on Sunday in front of them.
That's
That's where
it.
the magic happens, right? It happens in the counter on Sunday when you walk in the first time to a gym or to a Smoothie King. The magic, we can't do the magic. We're an expense. We got to turn the organization upside down. As you said, James, you said it's no more management. It's in her hands or his hands when that person comes in Smoothie King for the first time, and how well you did your job will reflect that. All
Yeah.
the leadership, all the tools you gave her,
All
the
the
value,
engagement
all
stuff,
the
yeah.
engagement stuff, because that's the magic. The magic isn't this stuff sitting in a room putting on a flip chart. The magic is what's happening in the front lines.
And this actually takes us into a completely different topic about how language corresponds to people's perceptions. I've realized it's some of the smallest changes I've made as a jiu-jitsu coach, where now when I teach a technique, I'll say something like, does that make sense? And that is perceived differently than being like, or like anything else. Or even if I use some words that make the person that's listening feel like, oh man, like I'm just not understanding this. It must be my fault. I'm not intelligent. But now I'll go like, does that make sense? Which almost reflects it to like, did I explain that well enough as a coach that you understand what I mean so that you can be successful as a practitioner? Language is huge, because the topic that we're getting onto now is like, I felt the way that you felt before. If I know what my intentions were and I know what's going on here and I convey a message to you, if you take it incorrectly, I looked at it as like, well, that's not how I meant it. That must be your fault. And I've had to re-engineer that as well. And it's shocking to think that like with people's filters, even the literal words that you speak to them with or the tone of your voice can drastically alter how they perceive that message. That's a whole nother part of management and people skills that we have to be very cognizant about. Otherwise, if you come across as demeaning or bullying or anything like that, you might be shutting your employee down when in your mind, you have the best intentions to build them up.
Now, that's huge. The number one thing to help me, because I'm pretty intense and I'm pretty impatient, at least I'm aware of it, is what you said, Jane. I phrase everything as a question now. That takes the edge off. Instead of just saying, hey, you did this, I'll say, hey, I heard about this. How do you feel about this? And just it takes the edge off, I think. And then there's a whole all these tools in your leadership toolbox that we learn about the question behind the question. How do you phrase it? It's never ending to be a better leader.
And it's almost wild, because when you think about it, you're like, but I mean the same thing.
Yeah, let's get on with it.
Why
That's
can't
what
I just be
feel
blunt
like.
with you and say exactly how I feel? But really, I mean, you're in the people business.
It's like we talked about, the exceptional people are the exception. There's only so many people like you in the world. It's just a long road to try to get people with your motivations. It's tough. It's just,
I give Chris a lot of credit because he's got a lot of personnel that are way more experienced than many. I mean, they're older, they've been around, and he's learned to cohese with them on a different level, because it's more about, we respect what you know about restaurants. We do. But now you respect the leadership. You ran one store with 8 people. It's a different game when you're running 14 with 25 people in a store. So again, it just matters how far you want to go on scaling, but I don't think anyone can scale long-term successfully without applying some of this their own way, all these tools we're talking about, because it will catch up with you in a little
that's
bit.
right. Yeah.
What are the companies that you guys kind of have used to model after that you think in our society are incredibly successful at doing this? Like, what are some of the people, it's great to talk to you about this, but you've probably looked at examples and gone, man, look at the way that these people structure this.
Right.
What are the people that really stand out to you that have crushed it with this new leadership versus management?
Right. We've got a few people, and there's different times throughout history that they've had peaked or valleyed or had special people that have moved on. So not necessarily they're all present day shining examples, but there's a lot of like just the turnaround at Delta with Ed Bastian and what they did going. You want to share that story? That's kind of a highlight, man.
We're not personal friends, but he's a CEO, and I heard him speak in a small group in a Maxwell session. I mean, I may get some of this wrong, but they had the biggest business turnaround in history a while back, and they had the biggest bonus to the staff ever noted since they've been track of it. And someone in the crowd asked Ed, well, how'd you do it? He said, well, here's how I did it. 90% of the frontline people are still there. 90% of the people at the high level are gone. I changed that. The culture wasn't right. The leadership wasn't right. So companies at certain times, Chick-fil-A, regardless of anybody's feelings about anything on a different level, they are in a class all by themselves with their turnover. They don't even have to post, like you were talking about with Orange Theory. These guys got
3 family members in there.
family
Yeah, it's something else.
What those guys, what the Cathys have created in Chick-fil-A is absolutely ridiculous. So there's different companies, different
Right,
times.
but I mean, you just feel it as a student of it. Like I just went to Jeff Ruby's restaurant in Cincinnati last week, and you just walk in and to have an experience from just a person passing you by say something that you know is a cultural thing, and to know that it's aligned at that deep level where my experience, regardless of when I come in and, if it's someone in the bathroom saying something to me, to know how hard it is to get that to that level consistently just blows me away. I mean, there's
it could be a small single.
Right.
Here's the bottom line. All we have to ask ourselves, James, is anyone listening to this, is when's the last time you had an exceptional experience anywhere? And
That's right.
I would guess it's.
I got like three in the last 5 years.
We'll our place eventually. We're working at it, but that's what it could be a one store, it could be a big company, different times. But what Chick-fil-A did, what Delta did, what these companies did, what Ford did. If you listen to Ford's turnaround, they did a lot of things we're talking about here. They did a shift around. They understood leadership, brought people along, creative values, how we're going to look, how we're going to run the company, how we're going to behave. Those tools they all applied that. You said it earlier. What's the common thread? They all different ways, different slants, but they all follow the same kind of path in terms of that.
So, I mean, like if you say that your success as a leader is 85% emotional skills, yet you run a company around the 15%, your meetings focus on addressing factors that play into the other 15%. What are you even doing? That's why we decided, I mean, if it's that influential and impactful, why aren't we spending 85% of our meetings on leadership discussions, on the bench, on building a bench and making these things take place and how the team development plan is going? If that's your success factor, if you got an engaged leader in there, like my dad said, it solves like 80% of your problems. So you should be putting your effort and your energy into the leadership development and not chasing numbers or results. Just take care of your people, build your people, and the results will flow. So it's just,
engage people.
It's so obvious. That's right. Yeah.
Most times. Go ahead.
It's wild that you brought up Chick-fil-A because I've only been to Chick-fil-A once recently. I was out in Vegas, and I was shocked by the fact that I said thank you to this girl 3 times throughout the process of ordering. This girl said, "My pleasure." So kind
Their
of
trademark.
Yep.
My pleasure.
I could tell it was trained
yeah.
because it was like, but it was, she came across as very genuine. "My pleasure. Could I grab a thing of ketchup, please? Thank you very much." "Yep, my pleasure." And like, you could see those little things because I'm constantly looking for things like that. But it's funny. Most people, it probably wouldn't even hit your conscious brain. But in your subconscious, you would remember how that person made you feel, the way they were smiling. They were very friendly. They had a trained process. They all had uniforms. There was a very strict flow through the place. And it does leave an impression.
Exactly. I mean,
It's cult-like following.
Yeah.
We're not getting the numbers. It's just they double. Nothing comes close to what they do. It's a cult-like following.
Yeah, I mean, you just feel it. Like this Nurture Family Dental in Brighton, ironically, I went in there. It was one of the most remarkable. I told everyone. I've been telling him to go there. Just those experiences, just you can feel it from the time you walk in. They address you by name. They just pass you off to another person who takes it. It just everything is. You can just tell every person you interact with is aligned. They're all there for the same reason. You can tell they're all bought into being something more than just a place to go or just a job. And you feel it right off the bat. It's just, when you're a student of this stuff, it's just a different feeling. And like my dad said, when's the last time you had an exceptional experience? I got like three or five in the last, as long as I can remember in my life, maybe. It's just, that's how rare it is. So to do something like that, and like you said, you're going to attract a type of employee to a Chick-fil-A who wants to be a part of something bigger than just a Taco Bell or McDonald's. They want to be a part of a winning culture, and they want to have an expectation that time with you is going to change my life for the better.
You also touched on something that is fascinating to me, where you said these big companies started changing their leadership instead of changing the low-level employees. That is brilliant.
With the same 85% of the frontline employees that took them into bankruptcy, they were able to become the most profitable airline. I mean, it says everything you need to know.
I'm literally thinking leadership starts at the top, but yet a lot of the times fingers would be pointed from management like, oh, the reason we're not successful is these people. Really, you're establishing the culture. You are the leaders. You're the people that someone looks up to and says, these are the standards by which we're set to follow. And that is brilliant. And honestly, it almost makes A-game people step up even more because it says, we're looking at you. The magnifying glass is not on the minimum wage person at the front desk greeting someone. The magnifying glass is going to be at the people on the top because at the end of the day, you set the expectations.
That's right. We run into a lot of, we interact with a lot of great experienced business minds, but they're just so trained to look at business in a traditional way and address issues in a traditional way, meaning, the physical plant or where it is or other factors or this or that or traffic. And we know how important all that stuff is. But the first thing we look at, we're almost brainwashed by it, is just the leadership stuff because we see how impactful the right manager can be, the right leader can be in a setting. It's so obvious. So that's the last thing we look at is the traditional business factors or levers. We're just trained to look at it, how impactful leadership can be. It really is 85% of a business's success. So why look at any other factors besides getting the right person in there? So the first place we look is the leaders and the teams and the leadership, not location or this or that or their hours or their menu or whatever the industry may be. It really is about the leadership team, because we've seen how impactful these transformations can be that are just so people-centric.
We can't stop talking. James, we can certainly pivot off leadership. The last thing I would say is, someone actually told me when I first got in Planet Fitness that you probably get a year out of these people and just plan on changing them. They treat them just as
expendable, turn them over.
Turnover 200-300%. I thought to myself, if I got a 300% turnover, how am I ever going to forget about excellence, how am I ever going to create good? So, that's when we start saying, and look, this thanks to the team and development. We won Franchisee of the Year as a small franchise. The team excelled. We've got proven track record. This stuff works. It's painful, not always good, not always a straight line. 2 steps back sometimes, 1 step forward. Please don't walk in one of our stores and write us. That isn't perfect, because we know we have a ways to go. But we're humble to that, but we're working at it. We're devoting our time in it. We don't want the CEOs and the executive team worried about all the other, and that'll come. But like Chris said, why don't we talk about the bench? And do you have any A performers? What can we do to make them? You got a B, C. What can we do to collectively help? Who can we do across the team? Doesn't matter, like Chris said, doesn't matter where the answer comes from. We want the best answer, not the answer from it don't matter if it comes from the front counter, a smoothie person, whatever it might be. We want the best answer, and that's what we're trying to work at. And I think in the long run, we're going to win with that theory.
Right.
And I tell you what, listening to this could be applied to any business model in
anything,
the world.
Completely anything. That's why I've become so obsessed with it, because it's almost like a cheat code. I realized, well, shit, if I want to be successful, like my dad said, help other people get what they want. And it's a hard pill to swallow that my performance is others' performance, because that means at the end of the day, I can't wake up and just say, I'm going to beast mode through this shit and get it done. You got to deal with people, and people are flawed. People have emotions, moods, everything. So it's a hard thing to just realize that my performance is now the success of others. But it's magic also when you realize that if I just get good at this, I can take this and win anywhere. And I can train people how to win and change lives and make people ultra valuable to an organization. And it starts with that shift of people know that if they train others, I'm not going to say, wow, I don't need you because these other people are doing it great. You're the most valuable person to me because I know you're creating these people, because you're not needed. You're replacing, you're training, you're doing this. So you have to build that trust that we're looking at those things, we expect those things, reward those things. So it's a long process, but that's why I got so addicted to it, because I realized that if I get good at this one specific thing, I can be a specialist and have a broad place I can apply.
It's all encompassing.
That's
and
it.
Really,
yeah.
I hate to say this, but a lot of this will reflect back to parenting, to children, to how you bring the kids up, to the integrity that you instill, the morals that you instill in your children. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, if you don't train children to learn how to be A-level people, they're not going to fit into these successful models, or it's going to be an extremely difficult, painful process. This almost goes back to the home life. Like the way you are brought up, would you agree?
It goes in all areas of life. You said it the best. It could apply to business, churches, families, whatever it might be. And again, it's not our answers. It's a bunch of great people before us that we've adopted and changed. But it's all out there. But yes, I totally agree. Leadership, engagement, all these things. I remember talking to one of the top Maxwell coaches, and he says, I go in a company, $1,500 an hour or something. I won't mention his name. He's like, 1 hour I can tell what's going on. I said, well, how? I don't start on top. I look at the org chart, and I go Sunday, and I talk to her, and I see how much of this stuff's getting down to him or her. In 1 hour, I will know where the company stands. I'll go back and tell you that I don't think it's getting down. Because that's that's the ultimate dream someday, as Christopher said. Somebody flies in from corporate and asks Christopher, hey, tell me about your top performing store. Well, here's the stores we own. Why don't you go check them out? Who should I talk to? Anyone you want, and let me know what you find out. That's values. Right. Now, that's the ultimate goal, ultimate trust. The opposite of that is you see people keep it close to the vest. I'll go with you. I'll do the talking. Well, don't talk to her. Talk to me. That's the app. That's what you don't want. You can tell that in the company.
And that's what you have to, and unfortunately, that's the norm, as you mentioned in your past life, because that's why you promote people who are ill-equipped and you give them no tools. It's on the companies, because a lot of the times we have first-time managers and then you don't give them any tools, and they're 19, 20-year-olds in this first-time role with people's lives reporting to them with no tools.
Even tougher than that, they were coworkers.
Right.
A week ago, now you made her a manager.
Exactly.
How tough is that?
And that's unfortunately the norm, as you mentioned. That's the norm. That's 99% of the industries out there. It's going to be a model similar to that, unfortunately. So not only do you have to build it, you have to overcome those pitfalls.
And in the old management style, one thing I always felt when I was a young man trying to come up, you know what I mean? Because I had big aspirations, big dreams, is I felt like my manager didn't really want to bring me up. He wanted to keep me down to the level where you're doing good where you're at, you don't need to aspire for more. You guys are preaching the exact opposite. You're basically saying we're going to build you into such elite caliber people that wherever you head out into your life's adventure, you're going to be successful. I like that spirit. That is something that, of course, someone's going to buy in more, because you know exactly what I'm talking about in that old management mindset where like my manager's job was to basically try to find any way he could to be like, no, you know, this is your role. I'm the boss.
Hoard the knowledge, hoard all that. Because that's what made him successful, was his specific knowledge and all that, not rewarding it or duplicating it. And last quote I love is just, management is addition and leadership is multiplication. So when you get these exponential returns for your time, how the hell can you scale with addition? There's no way you're going to build 12, 15 stores a year by adding, you got to get bigger than that.
But I mean, think about it. Just turn it around. I hear what you're saying, James, and that's right. That is old school thinking. If you went to a resume of a high performance-based company and told them, I generated 15, 20 leaders in the organization, made yourself not needed, that would be music to the ears. If someone told to us right now, I'd be sitting down with him or her to coffee.
We'll find a spot for you. Yeah.
If someone said, look, I can prove to you that I've created 15, 20 leaders in my company, they're doing this, I brought them up in the company, they have that skill set, they've proven it, which is the reverse of what you're saying. Most times keep it down.
Or they're proud of, I left and they collapsed, or they collapsed without me. They're proud of that.
Oh, yeah, they won't make it without me. Wow, that's
horrible, man. You didn't equip your people to do shit without you. That is the worst example of leadership ever, is I left and it fell apart. That's how special I am. That's how value I am. So you have to shift that. Your value to the organization isn't, like you said, it's not your performance. It's about proven track record of building and bringing people with you. We'll find a spot for you anywhere. Most valuable person in the world is people who can build teams.
And
like
that would only come from serious dialogue.
That's
because
right.
You'd have to reshift people's way of thinking. You know what I mean? You'd have to get that manager to realize that, like, man, the company cares about and values you for what you can produce in other people.
Exactly.
Not for just your ability to manage and threaten people. You know what I mean? Like, that, again, comes down from the top. It's just, it's your culture is going to be established by the people that you set in place for your company.
Mm-hmm. But that's scary, James. Think about that example you laid out, which is probably going on more than we'd like to think. What kind of person is he going to hire? You get an A come in to interview. He's not hiring him because he's threatened by it. And we want people to hire people that may be more talented than you. That speaks volumes, because you're about lifting all ships rise, the water rises. So it's a whole different mindset. But that's interesting how it can spiral on the negative side.
Yeah, and if it's okay, James, I wanted to shift back to something you asked, because it's something I wanted to get into, was around your intentionality. And if you asked me to this day, like, what my most impressive thing about my dad that gets more impressive by the day, it's his intentionality, hyper intentionality. And this is the one thing I'll admit he still runs circles around me on, and with a family, with a life, with everything else, with all of his, so to speak, comforts. I mean, it's something that he does at a higher level than anyone I've met my entire life. His intentionality, his discipline, the way he wins his day, how he never has a bad day in terms of letting his emotions dictate something. I mean, he is on it every day, and he has enough time to make sure I'm on my shit. At the end of the day, he'll just sometimes be like 9:30 a.m. be like, so not doing emails today, huh? And I'm like, damn it. He has enough time to be intentional. Stay on me, but that's something I just wanted to touch on, was let him speak to, is just his most impressive quality to me is his intentionality at this day. It's just a different world than anyone I've ever met.
Yeah, you would think that he would have put on the cruise control, but apparently he's still got the foot completely hammered down on the gas.
To do it with a family and just the amount of people he has responsibility for, or just has to caretake for, or that, he's just family stuff, everything else is important to him. He's just a leader in that, right, too. So to tackle all that at a high level and be intentional to serve these businesses and these people and to still grow personally, he's still killing it on personal growth. So that, I mean, to have that example for me is everything, but that's his best trait in my mind, is his intentionality.
Please speak on that, because the more we can soak that up, the better.
Well, the first thing I will tell you is, thank you, is I also had to learn the value of the recovery piece. I think that, you got to do what you got to do at times. Don't get me wrong. Your life's not going to be in balance. You want to be an entrepreneur forever, unfortunately. But I did now work the recovery piece in, and I do turn it off and go up north, but I schedule it in. But I live very intentionally each day. I do try to live intentionally. I pre-plan the week. People may say it's obsessive, but I do build in the recovery piece. I want to stress that. I wear the whoop. I'm a big believer in sleep and recovery and trying to keep recovery, especially at my age, because I know that that's so important in today's world, especially with COVID. But I do like to live intentionally. And again, I got that from a lot of great mentors, John Maxwell and others, that just don't let the day happen to you. Just you happen to the day and try to get what you want out of it. And schedule your downtime in. That's okay, too. It's just don't let it flow. So I really try to be intentional by having the day planned out each day. I think that helps my productivity, makes me happy, get my fitness time in, get my recovery time in, but get the work time in, but I really try to plan it out each day.
Do you make checklists as well, Chris?
Yes, yeah.
I find almost every leader that I know makes checklists.
You have to. You just, I switched this year just to also keep me in stride. I got like a new binder system I could show you where I just have every day. I start with, it's like a 3-part system. I have my full goals for the year, and then everything that I do daily that I want on that list that has to get done is on there. And even the things that are monthly or quarterly will have a daily aspect. So when I have to hit those things every day. And there's just, every time I drift from that, I am not performing at the level I need to be. So it's something that hit me about my dad was, I've been judging myself on my best days against others' best days. And I know that I can beat anyone on my best day, but it's really about how you're performing on those worst days. Because if I have a bad day, someone breezes past me, I want to be able to beat people on my worst day. And that's something where, like I said, his core intentional things he gets done, they're just everyday thing. I still let myself be emotional, be young, be influenced by these outside factors sometimes, and I have a lot of room to grow there. But for him to be at that level that it's consumed him, it's a part of his life, it's just a non-negotiable discipline, intentionality. It impresses me, man.
If you lead a company, every day I tried to take, it's tough. Especially what we just said, because there's a downside of that. You're just rolling. You're not doing you're busy, but are you
effective?
In other words, you're getting people climb the ladder, but someone's got to make sure the ladder's pointing in the right place you want to go. So I've learned that I got to slow down in the morning. And what are the top 3 things I can do? Now I'm not a CEO now, Chris is, and maybe you are, James, in your role, but I do a little different now. But what are the top 3 things I can do to move my company forward today? And what is it? Is it congratulating somebody? Is it whatever it might be? That's critical to a CEO, I think, because you can get wrapped up in the days and then miss the 3 things that could have moved the business forward. Or whatever, 2 or 3 things. You can pick the number. That's not important. But it might be congratulating someone that got 100 on a recent corporate inspection. That might be the most important thing you can do that day to move the company forward. So you've got to take some reflective time, too, and think through so you're not just running aimlessly. But I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the fact that you're running is not the answer. You could be going the wrong direction. That just means you're getting further from your goals. You really need to be intentional about where is this heading? You know what I mean? Where am I going on this path? I do something very similar to you. The way you described it was almost shocking because I make full lists of every single goal I have, but then in parentheses next to the goal, I write the absolute smallest step that I could take that should take me less than 15 minutes, whether it's an email to a matchmaker, whatever. It's just something that I should absolutely be able to get done that day. And when I cross all those things off every day, even though if I would make a list with only the big goals, maybe I don't get any of them done in a month period because they're big goals.
Right.
But when every day I go, got that. It makes you feel awesome because it almost reinstills the fact that you are making the progress towards the big picture. Because like a lot of us are driven by that. Like we want to see the results of our hard work. Right. You know what I mean? And that is showing you that like, even though the big thing's not checked off, I am 100% making progress. And if I continue to do that, I'm going to get to that end result.
Right. Well, James, if you cross the big thing off, but it's not the right big thing, you're right. I'd rather take a small piece of a big thing that's the right big thing to get me where I ultimately want to go. So it is a lot of thought, intentional thinking, and a lot of work, and you guys are obviously doing the same thing. That's huge.
A lot of discipline. I think I just admire his time. I'm sure it's just been time with it, but to get to the level of intentionality and discipline that he's at, it's just so special to see, because to know that, all the things that are in my mind, like handicaps, families, other responsibility, he's doing it at that level with that situation. It all goes back to his story of, like I said, how he started it with a family and no car and all that stuff. I mean, it's those same traits that got him through, and that just never went away. That's what finding the right partner to be lifelong. It wasn't about that specific business. It's just him. It's his style. It's who he is as a person. That's never going to go away, So
you really took the ultimate risk. I mean, because when I left, Champion to work here, I didn't have a family. I didn't have kids. So it was easier for me to make the jump. And in my mind, I was like, if this didn't work, I'll be successful. I'm great with people. I type 130 words a minute. I can learn things incredibly fast. Like, I'm not worried at all. So I didn't really feel like I didn't feel like I took really risk at all. You know what I mean? Because I believed in myself. When you have other people depending on you, that's my father always wanted to open his own body shop and paint. He did custom cars when I was young. He would take like 56 and custom make these cars and do French taillights and mold them. And he would enter cars in competitions and win competitions around the country. And that was like, I saw the desire, but he never pulled the trigger because he was always just like, what if it doesn't work? My family, they depend on me. Like, I'm the provider. And he sacrificed his goals and dreams to just make sure that he had a stable paycheck, which is funny because you could easily let go of that job quickly. You know what I mean? I mean, that could fall apart. But I remember witnessing that as a child in my dad and seeing how much passion he had. The late nights out in the garage till 3 o'clock in the morning, I would walk out. He'd be sanding a car down and trying to figure out if it was the exact look that he wanted. You know what I mean? And I remember I took a lot from that. And I think when I was about to make the jump into like what drives me, I remember seeing that passion in my father, and I was at the position where I didn't want to find out what my life would look like if I didn't try to go for it. But you pulled the trigger with all the odds again. Well,
again, I had the right partner, and I talked to her about it. I was conscious of what your father was conscious of, obviously, with her health not great and all that. But she's a dreamer like me, and she said, let's just go for it. So I had the right person to do that. It made a big difference.
People listening in.
I might have been the same struggle as your dad did, to be honest.
Because I think the first wife, kind of to summarize it, was kind of leaving this $100,000-$200,000 a year job at the time and could lose it all. And that was just enough for her. Some people just don't have that gear. And that's why when you were asking about kind of skill set or things I took from my childhood, just that it was just a part of me, that belief that I can take that leap without, it's just not even a question to me. I mean, there's no, we go so fast.
You can imagine the chagrin of everybody when we're almost all in again. So now after all the sales of Planet, we're all in again. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just who I am. And
we just have a belief that we're just going to take the jump and we're going to make it happen. It's just that belief that
you have to have that. You have to eat.
Failure's not an option, James.
I used to tell people like I'm a little bit delusional.
That's
but
it.
Thank God, I am very thankful that I am delusional. That when I was training people out of a basement, that I said I'm gonna fight around the world one day. I just posted on my Facebook wall 5 years ago. I was teaching jiu-jitsu in Finland at 3 different parts of the country. I got brought over to Finland. Thank God I was delusional as the kid that said, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this all over the world, and I'm going to make this dream come true. Because so many people won't allow themselves to step into that thought and that I can do this. You know what I mean? And you witness it in your father.
It's shocking to be around how many people we've been in this business circle that have had every opportunity my dad has to jump in on any one of these things. They've seen it be successful. They've been to that point, and there's just something that didn't let them take the jump. And it's fascinating. So that's why in my world, luck doesn't exist, because I've watched that leap. He's been to that point every other time where people don't, and they think it's luck. It was that intention, discipline, faith, and just that internal belief that you're just I'm gonna win, man.
It's fear, and not everybody's wired that way. It's not all entrepreneur. I mean, no disrespect to those who don't want to chase that dream, but you're right, James. It's just the faith. I mean, short of the talent that's required in some sports or fighting, which I think goes in the ingredient for ultimate success, the business world is a level playing field. I'd say to the people out there listening, I mean, I was scared making an LLC. I'm like, what's this LLC? I could never do that. You know how easy it is now.
So many barriers.
You pay $25, go on a website, and you have an LLC. So a lot of times those barriers are just false in your mind. It's a level playing field, which makes it exciting because, I mean, my talent of dunking a basketball has very little to do with my success in business. I can learn. I can find mentors. Anyone can follow. So it's kind of exciting to let the people know that.
And you can get what you put in. I remember with the LLC thing too. The first time I went to, I was sitting at home one day and I go, I don't know how to start a business. I didn't go to school for this. My brain said, pull up Google. I literally typed how to start an LLC. And then it said file articles of organization. So what did I do? I typed in what are articles of organization? And I just began reading and researching and then speaking to other people that knew it. And the funny thing is they presented it to me like it's the simplest thing in the world. But my mind was trying to convince me that like, you don't know this. It's probably difficult. It wasn't hard at all. Right. So you just said it perfectly. There's this illusion. Fear. You create a story based on fear because you don't know. But if you
like to say, not to interrupt you, false evidence appearing real. Fear, it just sticks in your brain. And when you get to the other side now, you look back and go, LLC? Come on, what are you worried about? Take you 5 seconds.
Yeah, my dad always, it's only the first time once. And that mindset along with if anyone else can do it, you can. It's just great. I mean, it was she says just that I'm actually become quite grateful for these barriers because at the end of the day, it helps me rest better knowing these are going to weed out the people who aren't about it. So I'm even playing at a higher level because I'm glad these barriers are there. That's why everyone's not doing it. It makes it unattractive for some people. Just like you mentioned, a job interview. Forming an LLC is going to keep people who aren't fit out of there, So just to know that we're already past those barriers already gives you a level of commitment to yourself and to your dream that is very special and energizing.
So I'm going to turn it over to you, Christopher. Is there anything else that you want to bring up on the podcast? Anything? You got your dad here in the spotlight. We are capturing and
we didn't fight once, which is unusual.
I know. Look at this.
We are immortalizing a moment in time that we'll have forever. This conversation that however far this goes, however many people watch this one day, this will be a resource that is always in existence. Just anything that you'd want to cover, and then the same thing to you, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah, and I'll let him speak to it. But I mean, the special thing is most time people have away from their families is at work, and I've been lucky enough to have my personal time is around my dad and work time is around my dad, and he's just been the biggest hero mentor I could ever imagine. And the more I learn and the more I'm around great minds and great people, I'm like, why am I even paying money for this shit? My dad's running circles around him. And you think, because I went through this wave of he's my dad, so I put him on a pedestal. Then you think, it can't be that great because you're on other people. But then now to be at this swing of my life where I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I'm just shocked every day at what he's doing. And I hope more people would spend as much time they do around their dad. And I'm lucky to have the same passions because I know every story. Every time we're together drinking coffee, I'm asking about these stories and learning everything I can. And it just means everything to me. And it's more and more special now because it's real and it's part of my life and it's what I'm going through. So I've been lucky enough to have him and have access to him all the time. So I have a lot of stories that I love and know, but anything else you want to cover, Dad, on your end?
I mean, and the one thing that is kind of unfortunate is a lot of families don't try to invest in each other.
That's right.
They do not try to build each other up. They, like I grew up with my mom's side of the family was extremely close. Everyone got together. They loved each other. They supported one another. Like I was surrounded by a lot of like that, the just belief put into me. Like they told me like you can be successful, you can do these things. But a lot of families don't have that. You know what I mean? And I think we need to look at our culture and our society and look within our homes. So many people are so busy looking outside for all the things that can distract them or bother them or that they're not happy about. Man, go back to work with your families and create these type of relationships and learn from each other. Yeah. And all of a sudden the world is not as bad as what CNN or Fox is going to tell you. The world is actually still an awesome place. You know what I mean? And we go through this thing once.
And he's done such a great job too, which he can probably a really valuable thing for him to speak to of, us being a father and son. That's its own unique complexity. That's been a lifelong journey, dynamic. But I couldn't imagine it handled any better than he did. I mean, I'm here doing what I did because the way he allowed me to have my journey. I mean, honestly, it could have ended any other way. And like, I'm the only, child doing this, and it could have ended any way, but I'm literally on this journey because he let me find it in the perfect way, in the perfect time. And, I couldn't imagine anyone handling a father-son dynamic better than what he went through.
Well, make no mistake, being in business with your family is another layer to deal with. I mean, you never turn off entrepreneurship. I mean, you try to schedule downtime, but there's no line. You get home at 5 and it's done. So we do have some challenges between lines of family time versus business time. And Thanksgiving dinner, we're fighting about
an email or something.
Email
never turns off, man.
It's not easy, but it's been a great journey. I'm glad he been on it, and it's been a great journey. The only message I would want to put with my kids and anyone listening, the number one valuable lesson I have, and I always try to teach him, is no matter, I still got a long way to go. I'm still learning. Be humble and learn from other people. I still do that. You can learn from anyone, even your enemy. There's something you could probably learn. So to have the guts to say, I don't know, or I'm not sure, can I just meet with you and pick your brain? I think that's been the number one thing that's got me as far as I go. Now, applying it and executing is a whole different thing. But not many people are willing to do that, and I continue to do that today. You're reaching out to people all the time and just saying, hey, can I learn? You're ahead of me. Got a great team ahead of me, and those relationships still last now. Some are 10 to 15 years old, and so it's huge to have that. But no, it's been a great journey with him. He's humble enough to learn and grow, and transparency's tough. For a young guy, that's even tougher, a young competitive guy. So he's been doing a great job. It's been a great journey. I appreciate the time here, James. I hope I added value to the people listening, and I've really enjoyed it.
There is absolutely no question that you did. And, maybe one day you'll have a son of your own or a daughter of your own, and you're going to be going through the exact same process that your father went through. And like the admiration and love that you have for your father, which is evident, effortlessly to see, that can be instilled in somebody else. So, man, it was truly an honor and a pleasure having you here today, both of you guys. And, we'll wrap this podcast up.
Yes.
Thank you.